today's webinar from Formschool and Qdabra Software. We are continuing the After InfoPath series with Pistachio Apps. I look at building lists into structured forms, and we'll take a look at a few different ways to do this with some different technologies and comparisons. My name is Bree Houston, and I will be your presenter for today. And just some housekeeping things before we get started, making sure that everyone has audio. Audio is necessary for this webinar, simply so you can hear what I'm presenting. So hopefully you can get your audio up and going so you're able to tune in and listen along. And let's go ahead and jump in to today's webinar. So today's webinar. We are going to focus on, again, building list forms with Pistachio Apps. So we'll say, what is it? We'll go over that. What are some related list form builders, and what are some of the features of those? What are the advantages of Pistachio? Then we'll go into a demo. And finally, we'll conclude with our recommendations and also going over some questions. So as we go along, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions in chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So first of all, I'd like to say welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you've tuned in to several of the After InfoPath series, I hope that you're liking the series and learning some great new information about different forms technologies. But why welcome? I think this slide is an important reminder that the After InfoPath series isn't about the doom and gloom of InfoPath, but rather an attitude of kind of welcoming these new technologies to design form solutions that maybe fit your needs the best as we kind of transition through changes in different form technologies. And those needs may still be InfoPath, or they may be another technology that fits your solution better. And that's really the goal of this whole series, is just to inform and give people the information about just different migration options that are available. So just a quick overview of the After InfoPath series. We've gone through quite a few weeks now. We started at the end of January with kind of an overview of some different options. And we've kind of extended this series from our original plan, but you can see we've gone through Formoda, SharePoint lists, Excel, Forms Viewer, K2. So our past webinars are listed up in the gray, and then our upcoming webinars are on the bottom. So if you'd like to view any of those past webinars, you can visit our YouTube channel, which is weekly webinars, or from our website you can also reach all of these videos for viewing. So this is kind of a funny image, but I think it really gets the point across of list forms and kind of the transfer of data. So what does transfer of data have to do with capillary action? I like to think of your data as that nice kind of colored liquid being transferred through the plant matter, and how your data really starts from where your user inputs and eventually ends where you want it to go. But there's really kind of that free-flowing action between where your data starts and where it ends up. So we'll start with list forms from Business Connectivity Services, and this is a Microsoft solution. And Microsoft BCS is a way to connect external SQL list data in SharePoint Foundation 2013, as well as SharePoint Server 2013. And the most common connectivity is to an external list, and it uses a process called connectors to bridge the data to your SQL database. The benefits to this solution is that it connects lists in SharePoint and allows features like to create, read, update, delete, and query list data. So it easily imports these lists and keeps your data kind of condensed to one location, as well as the ability to add columns and such. So there's really a lot of flexibility. Some of the drawbacks, though, is that the BCS Business Connectivity Services requires some configuration in either the SharePoint Designer or Visual Studio if you do want to make edits to your list in SharePoint. And so this kind of brings about the possibility of coding requirements, which we're not too big of a fan of here at Qdabra. We're a fan of codeless solutions and things that make people's solutions easier and more functional to design. One of the workarounds for this is a application called Lightning Tools, BCS Meta-Man. And essentially this creates your SQL tables and imports them to the program, and it creates the associations and uploads to SharePoint. So it's kind of a nice workaround to eliminate the use of SharePoint Designer or Visual Studio or any code, and pretty quick and easy, although this option as a workaround could become kind of pricey as a solution, just kind of a little FYI. And this really is a visual to demonstrate the way that the business connectivity services work. So where your user inputs their data, how it travels to either your list, column, or web part, and then from there, how it moves into SharePoint, how the data is stored, and eventually ends up in your SQL or .NET assembly, and eventually in your external data source. So I'll just pause a moment if anybody wants to take kind of a deeper look at kind of the transfer of data. So you can see that there's a lot of steps in this transfer of information. And another option that we visited kind of earlier in our After InfoPath series was list forms with access. And the nice thing about list forms with access is it integrates well with SQL Azure by building tables and lists from the app. So essentially with your Access list forms, you start in Access by building those lists, and you can easily export them to SharePoint and build your web parts. So the nice thing about this, and it's nice and also a drawback, is that your web part will inherit any of your theming from SharePoint. So it's kind of an out-of-box, not customizable layout, but it's simple, easy, and keeps kind of the same layout no matter what your kind of list data looks like in a form format. For more information kind of on list forms with access, you can take a look back at some of our previous webinars. We actually did a two-part webinar on migrating list data and then creating those access web parts. So that was on February 13th and February 27th. The two links below, at which all of our slides will be sent to you after the conclusion of our webinar, so you'll be able to flip back through and access these links. But the first one is a link to an overview of the blog, kind of detailing access web parts from Microsoft. And then the second is the link to those YouTube videos. All right, so into our Pistachio apps. And Pistachio, although it sounds and shares the name with the delicious, I think, delicious nut, they're kind of unrelated. However, the tagline kind of says it all. And their tagline is, whoops, I gotta switch. There we go. Sorry for all of you that were stuck on that previous screen. So their tagline kind of says it all. And their tagline is, in a nutshell. So containing your data in forms using SharePoint lists to store and organize your data, and then using the Pistachio web part as kind of that user-facing application for easy filling out and kind of a nicer way to collect your data. It leverages SharePoint and the ability to create your lists very easily, and really, like I said, in a nutshell, contains your data to those lists. So Pistachio Apps overview. It quickly links list data in an easy-to-follow format. And I'm going to go through all of this in our demo just to kind of show the quick and easy nature of this Pistachio app. When you link your list to Pistachio, you can automatically create your SQL database tables, which is a very nice feature. When you actually load the Pistachio app on your SharePoint site, there's a SQL database table that is kind of auto-created and contains even all of your lists to that database table. There's also a simple designer that's easy to use and kind of quickly customized layout with just a few quick changes. In some of the versions that Pistachio offers, there's templates available. So if you're looking to kind of have an out-of-box template, that's a nice feature. And it displays your linked lists in an easy manner. So these are all things that I'm going to get to in our demo. So without further ado, let's jump right into our demo. So I'm going to go over the Pistachio app, some of the different parts, and then kind of going along with the rest of our webinar series, I'm going to do a walkthrough of an expense report type form. Then I'm going to do kind of a quick walkthrough of the designer and show the process of adding a list and a child list to Pistachio and kind of how easy it is to do. So I'm going to switch over now to our Pistachio site. And you can see that this web part, I have promoted my expense report as kind of the first screen that you see, but we're going to go into the settings and to our admin panel. So this is kind of the start with the designer. And when you connect to your site, your apps are going to be what shows your license key and what kind of houses all of your forms. If we go down quickly to our tables, you can see that these are all of the tables available, and those come from lists that are created on my SharePoint site. So this web app kind of captures all of those lists, and you can see the ones that have child relationships also show that. So that's a nice feature to know which ones you're going to be able to link in the designer. And when I was talking about kind of updating lists, you do that through your connections. So your connections, you can see right here, and then if I walk through all of this, it will update those lists, which I'll do in a little bit. And I also have my views. So these are views that I've created from those lists. So I'm actually going to go back to that web part now and walk through filling out the form. So you can see right here I have an expense report and I have one item in my library. So I'm going to add a new, and again kind of quickly fill out some of this data. Just like so. And give it some more information, just like so. And the expense code is really going to be the key piece of information. This is how we're going to link our child table to our parent table. So we'll give it an expense code there. And save. And you can see as soon as I'm saving, it's right away updating my list. So that kind of child relationship that I was talking about, when I linked my child forms, you can see this expense column right here. So this is a quick way that's going to link me to those child tables. And you can see I can add a new expense. And there was none added for that table, so I'm going to select the correct expense code. We'll say Starbucks for all of you that are needing some coffee this morning. And we really were getting crazy, maybe some of those yummy donuts and coffee for the morning. All right, and we can just click Save. And you can see that that expense has been created and linked to our expense report. So that's kind of the quick and easy way to fill out your form. And now we'll go back to that admin panel. And we'll do the employee details. And you can see this is the designer part. So Really easy as soon as it loads. You can see that I've used some layout tables and kind of web parts to organize my data, give it some structure. And so with that, I can kind of quickly change things like the color of my header. You see it changed right there. I can also change the alignment. I can add some rules, which there's some logic that you can do to hide and show different fields depending on different values. You can see my child table linked right here, so you can see if I take it away and I go to my items, I can see my subviews, and it says none available. Oh, because I didn't actually close that. And my subview is available show right there, so I just can kind of quickly drag onto my form, and it creates that subview that's linked to my form. In the settings over here, this is how you can kind of change that alignment of all those text boxes. You can see that I have some different views when I clicked on that child view, the manager name. You can see I have the ability to kind of do some modifications. So some really quick and easy things that make your form customizable but still keep it very simple and clean. Now I want to pop over and I'm going to show you a list that I created. So I have the customer information list here, which has already been loaded into my Pistachio app. You can see I have these values here and my order details. And the way that you really link these columns is I've created a lookup on this column. So when I created my lookup, order item and the customer number is what I'm using to relate these two tables. So if we go into our list, in our list settings, you can see that that customer number has been added as a lookup to that other list. Now I'm going to go back to the Pistachio app, and I'm going to go to my admin panel. And right here you can see that I have 22 tables. And when I change my connections, I'm going to go back to my connections there and click on my connection. Again, like I was talking about, I'm simply going to save and scan because all of my information is already there. It's using my Windows authentication, so I don't even need to enter my username or password. And you can see now I have 23 tables available. So if I go back to my tables and my customer information, you can see that I now have one child table, which is going to be my order details. So if I look at my views, I have my customer information view, but not an order details view. So if I go back to my tables, oh, no, sorry. This is still a new technology for me. If I go add new, I can go to the app, which is my expense report, and the entity is going to show all of my available lists that I can create a view from. And I'm going to select that order details, and we'll just simply call it order details, and click save. Now you can see that that view is available. And if I go to my customer information, which I've kind of organized and designed here, and to my items, you can see in my subviews, my order details is now available. And I can simply drag that over, just like I did, let's see, just like I did with the expenses. And when I save, that will become available. So now we're going to switch and configure our web part to this list, our customer information, and save. And you can see that that has become my new primary view. Okay, so after that demo, in a nutshell, what is our take on Pistachio? You can visit our Forms Pro website, and all of these details are also listed there. But essentially what we see as the benefits are the ability to take your SharePoint lists and kind of automatically integrate them into the web part and then integrate with SQL database tables. And it's a really quick and easy way to do it. It also links the list data and creates the relationships, so you have the ability for some repeating data that's linked in a very easy manner. You saw when I clicked on those details from the expense report, all of the expenses that were linked are listed, so that's a very nice feature. Easy to design and just deploy each one of those forms. What we see is some of the limitations. Your layout, you're kind of limited to what the app allows you to design. Kind of contrary to InfoPath, if you've used that, there's a lot of flexibility there. So it can be nice to have some of those limitations, but again, they are there. And the SQL support is only included with the enterprise license, so that's another kind of limitation. What we see is the cost to migrate, and you again can read through these, that you need to create either new lists or have list data available on your SharePoint lists. And then the cost to maintain is essentially maintaining your lists on SharePoint. So what we recommend, Pistachio is great for data that displays in list views and for reporting. So if you're looking for kind of an easy, clean way to display your data, that's really where we see the advantages of Pistachio. And that kind of brings me to the end of my presentation this morning. I'm going to open for discussion or questions now. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the dialogue and we'll get them answered. It looks like Tom has a question. Does Pistachio work with SharePoint libraries as well? And from my experiences, I have not investigated that answer. My default would be, I think it works primarily with lists, but again, let me kind of investigate that further, Tom, and I can get back to you with a better answer on that one. And let's see, any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them into the questions dialog, and we'll go ahead and get those answered for anyone who has questions. I'll leave it open for a few more minutes. And again, some of the nice advantages of Pistachio are also that you can take your list data and build some logic into your form using their rules. So if you've used InfoPath, it's very similar in the kinds of logic if-then-else format, if you're familiar with that. Okay, well, it looks like we're not getting any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone for joining me on this morning's webinar. We appreciate any feedback that you want to generate on today's webinar, and I hope that you enjoyed this quick look at Pistachio Apps as well as a comparison to some other list forms, and I hope you have a great Thursday. Thank you so much.